When it comes to renewable gas, we've seen what's possible here and around the world. But let's be honest, possibility doesn't always mean progress. Because even when you've got a key piece in the energy solution puzzle, there's policy, there's skeptics, and there's people who have never even heard about it. In this episode, we look at some of the reasons why biomethane isn't more established yet in Australia. And what needs to happen next? The tech is here? The waste is here? The will? It seems to be building. Let's talk about roadblocks. There's lack of awareness in this space. Feedstock providers aren't always aware of the value of their waste, and many potential users haven't been fully made aware of this low emissions energy solution as a possible option for them. It's also the slow progress of policy support for a nascent industry. Australia's renewable gas sector is ready, but waiting to catch up on other parts of the world. And while we wait, industries need to keep running, but they're also still emitting. Supportive policy settings for renewable electricity was introduced as far back as 2001. It made sense to focus on reducing the emissions from electricity, as coal generation contributed to the high emissions intensity of grid electricity. But now that the grid comprises 40% renewable electricity generation and growing, now is the time to create policy support for renewable gas for its role in supporting the energy transition and for helping to decarbonise commercial and industrial gas use.
Global policy around biomethane has really started to take off. One of the things that made this occur was Europe needing to get off Russian gas. Due to these circumstances, it's meant that a lot of European countries are starting to turn to renewable gas and really focus on its development.
So we need to take that same approach. We need the diversity that in the energy landscape that renewable gas can bring, and we need to start today.
I think that the gas industry will get more support once everyone is a little bit more informed about what it is that biomethane does.
So I think to scale up this industry, we really need 4 things. We need, first and foremost, awareness. People need to know that they can continue to use gas whilst reducing emissions. We also need government policy support to send a really strong signal to investors that this is a market that's worth investing in. We're also going to need some funding support for these early movers. These projects aren't going to have access to solid supply chains yet. They also aren't going to have access to secondary markets for some of the products that are created when the biomethane is produced. So for these early movers, funding support will be critical. And then to really scale up this market, we need to establish those secondary markets for those other products that are created when biomethane is produced, and that will include biogenic CO2 and digestate, which acts as a low-carbon fertiliser.
In the circular economy, all of the renewable electricity and gas needs to be produced in the regions. We can produce some in the cities, but most of it's going to come from the regions. So we're going to see a really large regional development, which is important for the regions. And it's also building on the existing infrastructure in the regions of grain growing, transporting grain, storing grain. So there's a lot of opportunity for those regions to benefit from this. So really, it's a very elegant solution, and people will benefit from it in a circular economy.
Then there's trust. Some think renewable gas is just rebranded fossil fuel. Others point out it's still gas. It still emits methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So how is biomethane any different? Here's the thing. Biomethane, when combusted, only releases biogenic emissions that are part of the natural ecosystem. It is made from things we already throw away. So we're not adding any new emissions to the atmosphere that aren't already there. Because of this, biomethane is considered by the Clean Energy Regulator as a methane-rich, net zero carbon emissions natural gas substitute produced from waste methane generated by organic waste. Why do they define it like this? Because the carbon it emits when burned is not new. It's the same carbon that was recently absorbed from the atmosphere by the plants, food, and waste it's made from. No digging up carbon that's been trapped underground for millions of years. Just recycling carbon that's already circulating. and putting it to work. And when combusted, it's part of the biogenic cycle, not a fossil one. That's the big difference.
One of the criticisms, and a lot of the skeptics say, oh, you're not going to be able to substitute 100% of our gas demand with renewable gas. If we got 50, 70%, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. It represents billions of dollars in infrastructure and investment, but also helps to really very rapidly, affordably and responsibly transition our economy in a powerful way.
And I think if people actually understand that it's waste that we're converting into energy, a lot of people would be really optimistic about that.
There's plenty of this stuff out there in the paddock. There's tens of millions of tonnes of available agricultural cropping residues that we could aggregate and convert if we put our minds to it. It's just a fantastic story. You know, we can walk and chew gum in this country. We can do multiple things, and it's the ultimate team pursuit, a bioenergy project, because it involves so many parts of the economy, so many different ministries. It crosses over agriculture, it crosses over energy, it crosses over regional development portfolios. There's a whole multitude of benefits that can actually inform different portfolios in the policy landscape as well.
Other countries are making this work. Across the EU, countries are backing renewable gas with serious ambition, from national mandates to funding for local digesters. It's a coordinated approach built on policy, not just potential. Across Europe, there are thousands of anaerobic digesters quietly turning waste into low-emission, renewable fuel, powering homes, schools, businesses, even entire suburbs. So, what about here in Australia? Australia produces over 14.6 million tonnes of organic waste every year. According to the ARENA Bioenergy Roadmap, by 2050, there is the technical potential for 506 petajoules of biomethane annually, enough to replace 100% of Australia's industrial gas use. We've got the waste, we've got the space, and we've got the know-how. So, what's the hold-up?
In the Australian context, renewable gases haven't yet developed, and there's a really good reason for that. The renewable electricity sector needed to come first, and that's because coal is so much higher emissions than natural gas. Now we've got renewable electricity industry humming, we look to gas. So how do we decarb gas? You look internationally. REPower EU is a target in the European Union to create 35 BCM of biomethane by 2030. This will require 37 billion euros of investment. Think about that in the Australian context. If we invest in this amazing renewable energy, what we could create here.
Denmark's a really great case study in integrated bipartisan system planning, where they've looked at the entire energy landscape, the needs of the economy, the resources and infrastructure that they already have, the technology that they may be already starting to develop, and mashed it all up in a very, very clever way to actually come at the problem from multiple angles. So it's not one single solution, there's not one silver bullet. They are actively reducing demand for gas at the same time as they're decarbonising the residual gas that they have identified that remains in the economy. We need to do the same thing here in Australia in order to actually bring about the shift that we need. It's not about one thing that's going to solve all of our problems. I think renewable gas has a fantastic and real opportunity, material scale opportunity to contribute in the Australian economy moving forward.
We've moved into an era of having to get this message across to people that can invest. We've got it through the government sector. We now need to push it into the development sector.
North America currently has over 500 biomethane facilities. It's a fantastic achievement, and that has been driven primarily by policy. What we're seeing in that market evolution is a move from the mandatory market, where it's driven by policy, into now a voluntary market.
We can leapfrog and actually step forward into this new biogas sector here in Australia using the very best of thinking and technology and evolution that's occurring overseas, and that gets us to where we need to get to a lot faster.
This isn't about turning a tap or releasing a valve. This means rethinking the system.
There isn't one solution to net zero. I think people need to realise that we're at a point in time where we need to acknowledge we need to try everything. We need to put everything on the table today. And biomethane is one of those options that Australia has forgotten about. And we need to add biomethane to that mix. And I think that is the most important message.
I think the main takeaway is that we have to recognise that gas is an essential ingredient. It's part of the menu. There's certain things that governments can do about that. They can speed up the planning process. They can acknowledge the fact that gas is going to play an ongoing role, both for heavy industry and industries that don't have alternatives.
And renewable electricity can't replace natural gas in all of our processes, but biomethane is a potential solution that we have that is available to produce today using existing technology that's commercially viable. And that's a pathway to decarbonise processes in manufacturing that can't simply just switch to renewable electricity.
I think biomethane's great. It just seems so neat. It's taking what was a waste stream of gas and it's repurposing it for something that adds value and can be used. But the bonus about it is all these additional benefits that come from it. The carbon dioxide is separated, and that creates a stream that can be captured and used for food and beverage or pharmaceuticals. It also creates a digestate, which is a really rich fertiliser that can be fed back to crops. So the whole process is incredible at capturing waste and turning it into renewable energy.
The biomethane industry has absolutely gained momentum across the 3 years I've worked in it. When I first started, no one had really heard about it. We had really no policy support and it was infant. In 3 years, the changes we've seen at federal and state levels of government, from farmers getting amongst it, from project producers starting to come out of the woodwork and really wanting to do this is really exciting. And what it shows us is opportunity. There is so much opportunity for so many communities that can benefit from this really great renewable energy source.
When you're making long-term investments over 25 years, you need certainty. Investors need certainty. Policies are important, roadmaps are important, and also the narrative that governments create around renewable gas. We need to realise that it is a potential and it's going to play a role, and that is going to give the investors those confidence to be able to lean in.
From how we handle waste to how we value energy. From small-scale production to industry reform. Biomethane isn't the only answer, but it's part of the big picture and it's a great one. All we need now is the momentum to match the technology.
So I think the government really needs to focus on developing a biomethane industry with the same fervour that it did for renewable electricity and it did for hydrogen. And then we'll have a fantastic industry.
What happens next isn't just up to politics or luck. It's up to all of us. Farmers, engineers, manufacturers, even our future change makers. Because if human waste can help power the planet, or at least businesses and factories, then anything's possible.
And that, my friend, is what you call fuel for thought.